Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. I hope everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I'm pleased to be here with the co-chair and speaker pro tem, Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes, and we're going to be facilitating today's meeting. We'll give some opening remarks and kind of walk you through the process of how things will flow today, and then certainly be available for any questions if you have them at that time. So with that, I'll go ahead and proceed, if that's all right with you, Madam Co-Chair.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are convening as a special joint legislative committee to select the state treasurer. Now, the Maryland Constitution empowers the Maryland General Assembly to elect a state treasurer every 4 years. In February of 2019, Nancy K. Kopp was reelected by the General Assembly for a 4-year term as state treasurer. On October 18th of 2021, Treasurer Kopp announced her retirement and indicated that she would step down as state treasurer by the end of 2021. And we have to pause right here and thank Treasurer Kopp for her many years of dedicated and distinguished public service. Many of us served with her when she was a member of the House Appropriations Committee and went on to have a wonderful relationship and watch her serve valiantly as a public servant in the role of state treasurer. So we want to definitely applaud her for her work and wish her the very best as she moves forward. Under the Constitution, in the case of a vacancy in the office of treasurer, the General Assembly chooses a successor to serve for the remainder of the unexpired term of the office. This committee is tasked with interviewing candidates and recommending one of the candidates to the General Assembly for election as treasurer. Now, the state treasurer, as you know, is responsible for managing and dispersing state funds. The treasurer is the custodian of the investments of the state and of securities and collateral pledged to the state. The treasurer's office administers the insurance programs of the state and handles all details related to the issuance of general obligation debt of the state. One of the most important functions of the treasurer is to serve with the governor and comptroller on the Board of Public Works. The treasurer also serves on numerous other boards, including the Board of Revenue Estimates and the Maryland State Retirement and Pension Systems Board. I'll turn it over, Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Griffith. Good morning, members. Today, we have 4 candidates that have applied for the position of treasurer. Background information about each candidate has been provided to each committee member. Also, during this process this morning, we are definitely on Zoom, but please know that if you have any questions at any given time, please use the raised hand feature in the Zoom features. After the interviews and any discussion of the candidates are completed, members will make a selection for the desired candidate using the chat function within Zoom. And please note that those chat function, within the chat functions, you will know that it'll be private. It'll be going to just one staff member only. So your decision will be only to one individual. This morning, we will take the candidates in alphabetical order. So welcome, candidates. Our first candidate, and for all, please know that you have 5 to 7 minutes worth time of opening and being able to tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then members will have the ability to ask questions. Our first candidate is Mr. Jorge Cortez from Montgomery County. Good morning, Mr. Cortez. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Chairwoman Griffith, I have prepared some statements beforehand. Chairwoman Sample Hughes, members of the Special Joint Legislative Committee, I have an immense respect for the task force and before this committee. I am also grateful to sit virtually before you today to present my intentions of becoming your next treasurer. My name is Jorge Cortez. I was raised between my father's family in Costa Rica and my mother's family in New Orleans during my childhood and teenage years. After graduating high school from both countries, I joined the U.S. Army and was stationed overseas as part of my service. After graduating as a lawyer in Costa Rica, I did postgraduate studies in securities markets and a master's degree in economics. Afterwards, I obtained the prestigious Turing Award, which is the UK government's international awards program aimed at developing global leaders. Under the sponsorship of this scholarship, I studied for my second master's degree, this time in banking and international finance. I have a 23-year trajectory in the global capital markets, including domestic and international roles such as acting treasurer, acting head of capital markets, treasury fixed income portfolio manager, senior debt capital markets officer, funding officer, fixed income trader, and wealth manager. These positions have been held in international financial institutions overseas and in the United States. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working for 14 years as an international public servant for the Treasury departments of two multilateral development banks, including a Washington-based AAA rated institution. A job for one of these institutions is what brought me to Maryland 4 years ago, a state that my family and I have grown to love ever since, and where I certainly hope to spend the rest of my life. As you know, multilateral institutions have a complex mandate focused on providing financial assistance to developing countries to promote sustainable economic and social development. The MDBs primarily fund large infrastructure and other development projects and provide loans tied to policy reforms by the government. Due to their mandate and the fact that they don't have a lender of last resort, nor have depositors, liquidity management and funding are vital to their existence. These organizations also have a complex governance and oversight structure, as their shareholders are multiple countries. The last multilateral that I served for had 26 beneficiary member countries with a combined population of 600 million people and a combined GDP of 5.6 trillion US dollars. My experience in multilaterals include roles as senior investment officer, where I co-managed a 1.5 billion liquidity portfolio, successfully delivering a solid performance during the global financial crisis. This role included portfolio management of a proprietary fixed income portfolio composed of investment grade and emerging market bonds, structured credit products, and asset swaps. I was also responsible for overseeing third-party asset managers with mandates in investment grade, foreign exchange, and emerging market funds. My role also included supervising and analyzing investments in private equity funds. I also advised my employer's pension fund in investment policies and the selection of third-party managers. Within these organizations, I have also worked in the capital markets units, where I have been responsible for executing funding strategies in the global capital markets through a $4 billion program, where I have done 44 transactions around the world for an aggregate of approximately $7 billion in bond issuances in US, Latin America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. These transactions have been in multiple structures, types, and tenors. I want to be your next treasurer, so I would like to provide continuity to the outstanding job that the Honorable Nancy Coop has done in keeping a solid financial management that makes Maryland one of the few states with a AAA rating by all major agencies. Nevertheless, there are still plenty of opportunities for improvement. As the Purple Line fiasco has shown, there needs to be a major improvement in Maryland's P3 statute and how the state deals with project finance. There's also a need to have an improvement in the participation and engagement of minority contractors in the procurement processes led by the Board of the Public Works. The Maryland State Retirement and Pension System could also improve the monitoring and evaluation of third-party asset managers and its portfolio rebalancing to continue working towards a fully funded status. With my experience gained at development institutions, I also hope to materially contribute with best practices to the state development plan. The fact that I'm an outsider and a registered independent will allow me to work with both sides of the aisle without any conflicts of interest and always prioritizing Maryland's, not the party's, best interest. I believe that this role requires someone with hands-on experience and not someone who has never even remotely performed any of these tasks and hopes to come and learn on the job. The brave and groundbreaking Maryland legislator has shown in the recent past by breaking with historical practices. Representation matters. As part of a minority representing 12% of the state's population as per the 2020 census, it would be an honor to have a seat at the table and be the first Hispanic to be appointed state treasurer in Maryland. I firmly believe that my experience and professional background are a strong fit for a Maryland state treasurer role, and that the committee members and General Assembly will favorably look upon this submission, as I look forward to having the opportunity to serve you and your constituents in seeking a better Maryland. Thank you, and I'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. At this time, are there any questions from the members for Mr. Cortez? Okay. Not seeing any at this time, I would like to move on to our next candidate. Our second candidate is Delegate Derek Davis from Prince George's County. Welcome, Mr. Delegate Davis.
Welcome, Madam Speaker Pro Tem and members of the Joint Select Committee. I appreciate this opportunity to appear before you. For those of you who don't know, my name is Derek Davis. I am currently a delegate representing the 25th Legislative District in Prince George's County. By way of background, I have a bachelor's in public policy and a master's in public policy as well, but my concentration was in public sector finance. So I do have an educational background as it relates to financial issues affecting government. I thought about when I first heard that Treasurer Kopp was going to retire. When I first thought about that position, I asked myself one question, simply, why would I want to be treasurer? I can't tell you it's been a lifelong dream. I won't say that, but public service has been. As many of you know, as I said earlier, I've been a delegate for the past 27 years, and I'm motivated by Maryland and all that it has to offer its citizens. And as I began thinking about the work of the office of the treasurer, I noted that I wanted to continue to carry out the treasurer's duty to protect and safeguard state funds in these volatile times, while maintaining sufficient funds to meet the cash flow needs of the state and certainly to achieve a return on our investments. I look forward to having the opportunity to lead the state's efforts with the major rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, and that we maintain that coveted AAA bond rating from each of these rating agencies. As a member of the State Retirement Board, I want to continue to work towards fully funding the state's pension fund. As a member of the 529 Board, I want to work to increase participation by Maryland residents in saving for their children's education, which is tantamount to saving for their future. I look forward to serving on the Board of Public Works, representing the legislature's interest and continue keeping the members informed of items of interest. I know you all know that I'm pretty shy, but I will stand up and certainly speak and communicate the will, the desires of the legislature in a bipartisan fashion. I look forward to working with the Legislative Policy Committee and the Joint Committee on Management of Public Funds that the Treasurer report to on a regular basis, as well as the Joint Pension Committee on issues related to the State Retirement Agency. The duties of the Office of the Treasurer are far and wide, and they're critical to keeping Maryland's economy moving forward, as well, not only from a governmental standpoint, but from a business standpoint as well. There's a lot to learn. I've been researching the office since I announced my interest in it, and I know that we have a number of critical issues that the Treasurer's office is either facing directly or dealing with. Attrition being one. It's a 60-person office, I believe, and I know they're working to fill it, but there are 25 vacancies recently in that office. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge, not just with Treasurer Kopp is leaving, but her longtime deputy who's been there for 40 years. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of institutional knowledge that we have to replace. And I believe that my knowledge of state government, my relationship with the parties involved will enable me to hit the ground running and to continue moving forward. I know that the Treasurer is trying to help resolve some issues with the Department of Labor and Bank of America as it relates to to the to funds that they are holding. That's going to be critical. I'm monitoring that closely. Looking forward to getting in, helping to resolve that. We're talking a large amount of money. Again, that's critical. It's left over from the unemployment insurance fund issue that we had last year. That's one of the things, if given the opportunity, I intend to step in immediately and try to get resolved. So again, I don't want to get too far into not allowing you all to have opportunities to ask questions, but there are a number of things that are going on with that office that I believe I would like to continue, and that there's some things that I hope to be able to improve upon, to expand upon, and there are issues that I know need resolving, and I believe I am uniquely qualified to resolve those issues. So thank you very much for this opportunity to appear before you all, and I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. Committee members, at this time, do you have any questions for Delegate Davis? Senator Simon Ayer, please unmute.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you, Delegate Davis. I've always enjoyed working with you. I think you've done a great job down in Annapolis. One thing, though, the position of treasurer is typically a nonpartisan position. And you've been in the legislature for over 25 years, where partisan politics is part of the role down in Annapolis. Can you share how you would transition from a more of a partisan position into more of a nonpartisan position?
Thank you very much, Senator Simon. I certainly appreciate that question. And certainly I would hope that the members of this committee and those that have served with me can vouch for me in the statement that I am about to make. I've always put the interest of Marylanders first and foremost. I've always tried to do what I thought was the right thing to do. And quite frankly, that has gotten me in trouble from time to time. But I never focused on party. I never focused on partisanship. So to answer your question, to be honest, I would just keep doing what I'm doing, keeping laser focused on what's best for Maryland and its citizens, its businesses, what we can do to continue moving our state forward, and let my decisions be guided by that thought process. I've never looked at the job in terms of Democrats, Republicans, conservative, progressives, and I believe that there are members on this panel that can certainly attest to that. So I hope that answers your question, but in a nutshell, I would just say doing what's best for Maryland is the way I would transition from any type of partisan action into a nonpartisan role.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that answer.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for Delegate Davis? Not seeing any. Thank you, Delegate, for your time today for the treasurer position.
Cool.
Our next candidate is Mr. John Douglas, former Baltimore City delegate, currently from Montgomery County. Welcome, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Douglas, would you be able to unmute yourself?
Can you see me?
Can't see you, but I can certainly hear you.
I'm trying to adjust my I apologize. I'm having trouble with my Zoom session. Shall I go ahead with the orals since you can't see me?
Yes, absolutely. I would like to proceed with hearing you clearly. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. I would prefer meeting all of you in person, but of course, during the pandemic, Zoom sessions have become the new norm. I don't know most of you because I've not been in the legislature for a while, but I do know Delegate McIntosh. And Maggie, glad to see you. Hope you have a nice day. I have extensive experience in legislative and financial matters. and have been at the forefront of many of the major fiscal reforms that have enabled us to better manage state finances and maintain our AAA credit rating. I sponsored the constitutional amendment in Maryland mandating a balanced budget. That's one of my major achievements. That was approved by the Maryland voters in 1974. I worked with the Committee on Maryland Debt Control that received a national award and enabled Maryland to be recognized as one of the best managed states in the country. I was a member of the Spending Affordability Committee while in Annapolis. I also authored another constitutional amendment which gives the state emergency borrowing power to meet revenue shortages in the state treasurer. I chaired the Joint Budget and Audit Committee from 1975 to 1988. I believe that committee is now known as the Joint Audit Committee. I served as a vice president of a federal savings bank, which gives me banking experience. After I left the legislature, I became deputy director of the Department of Assessments and Taxation, and I assisted with the management of that department for 10 years. I had board of directors experience as I served on the board of trustees of the Maryland retirement system for 10 years. That system, of course, has assets of over $66 billion. And I was a point man for the major state-of-the-art conversion for the office. Since I have, to make my presentation very short, I have 3 priorities that I would address as your treasurer. As you know, the treasurer sits on roughly 14 boards and commissions. In my view, the most important of those is the state board, which oversees the retirement systems. That system is a $66 billion enterprise. For comparison's sake, the state budget this year is only about $52 billion. The retirement system provides benefits for over 165,000 retirees. Unfortunately, our $66 billion retirement system is not considered well-funded by industry standards. A pension fund is considered well-funded when the funding ratios are in the range of 80 to 85%. In Maryland, our funding level is only at 72%. So you can see we have a lot to do to bring our retirement system funding up to a well-funded level again, which is considered 80%. Before I left the board, I did a study as to the investment performance of our retirement system. That result showed that we were dead last among our peers in our investment performance. I decided that I'd do a deep dive into why we were so poor in our retirement. We, during the 10-year period that I studied, our returns were only 6.42% for the preceding 10 years, the average, while our peers were 7.71% for that period. If you extrapolate that over the 10-year period that I was looking at during my time on the board, our estimated fund balance today would be around $53 billion for the period studied, rather than $44 billion. So we would have done much better had we performed in the top quartile of our members, and we would have had about $9 billion more in assets. So we have a lot of work to do there. So that's my first priority. I took a deep dive into the investment process for the system and the elections that they've made. Priority 2 is the state retirement system frequently has an operating system which is called MPAS. That stands for Maryland Pension Administrative System. The system is fairly well designed, and it offers all kinds of reports, procedures, etc. for the system. But there's one big problem with MPAS. MPAS is vulnerable for being hacked. Let me give you a little background. While on the board hired 2 contractors to assess the security of both the internal and the external state board retirement system. We found that the process that they used was a little short-sighted because it looked at them separately. It didn't look at the entire exposure of the board and the retirement system to outside hacking. What I did was to design a proof of concept hack that I believe would enable a hacker to steal roughly $300 million in state funds. I presented that proof of concept to both the contractor which looked at the inside investment security and also the one that looked at the outside. And neither of them could give us a definitive answer to whether that proposed concept of hacking was vulnerable. So one of the second things I would do was to hire cybersecurity experts to see if we could not separate the internal parts of MPAS that are on the web and exposed from a separate and put it on a separate network. So I'd be looking at that. My final priority would be, I have a proposal that I believe which would significantly increase the assets of the retirement system by a transfer, an asset transfer. I can't say very much about this at the moment because I want to have the Division of Legislative Services do an analysis and get back to us on the benefits. In total, I've had extensive budget experience. I've been on the forefront of most of the innovations in state finances in Maryland, and I would appreciate the opportunity to represent you as the next treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Members, at this time, are there any questions for Mr. Douglas? Okay, not seeing any at this time. Thank you again. Our final candidate is Mr. Joseph Zimmerman from Queen Anne's County. Welcome, Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you. Is the video running?
Yes, we hear you and see you clearly.
Okay, let me adjust my microphone. I can't see myself, that's all. Thank you for your time this morning. I prepared a very brief opening statement in anticipation of more questions, and that's fine. We'll see how that goes. Position of Maryland State Treasurer is an incredible opportunity for me to continue my career as a public servant. I've been a public servant here in Maryland for over 40 years. And as you can see from my resume, I have broad experience in public finance across a number of types of government entities here in Maryland. And that experience will allow me to bring technical knowledge to the functions of the office, as well as a demonstrated ability to work with elected officials. My undergraduate degree is in accounting from Frostburg State. I earned an MBA from the University of Baltimore, and I'm an active CPA in Maryland. I have over 40 years of direct experience in the functions of Maryland State Treasurer. And if selected, I will work diligently to manage the state's funds, provide leadership to the Treasurer's staff, and represent the legislature on the 14 boards and commissions assigned to the Treasurer. With that, I'll answer any questions you have.
All right, you are short and sweet, Mr. Zimmerman. Committee members, are there any questions at this time for Mr. Zimmerman? Okay. There being none, I don't see any at this time. Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman, for your time today.
Thank you.
And members, all of the candidates are still on. I don't know if there are any questions for anyone that had spoken before.
Madam
Okay.
Speaker Pro Tem, I'll ask each candidate that's available and in the room. Each of you referenced the role of the treasurer and provided your information, and thank you all for that. Just understanding the multifaceted role of the state treasurer, I would like to hear from each of you what your leadership style will be in terms of working with your staff and working with the Board of Public Works in particular, if each of you could speak to that.
Okay, and we'll begin with Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Well, my leadership style, it's inclusive. I think one needs to build up their team and hear everyone, have a 360 feedback can never underestimate any single position whatsoever. Regarding the Board of Public Works, it is a very, it's been notorious, as from what I understand, as far as the some of the arguments that have taken place before the board. The treasurer represents the legislator, and as that, in that position, the treasurer must represent the best interests of the constituents of the legislator. Has to be transparent, efficient. I believe in transparency in public office. It's something that is very important. Always laser focus on the agenda. I think that bringing non-agenda topics to the Board of Public Works sometimes might be a waste of time. It's not the proper forum to see those types of debates. Needless to say, if debate is warranted, it will be had, but you know, it needs to be focused. It needs to be focused on the issues at hand. And honestly, I think that one of the reasons why we had the purple line debacle was probably because somebody dropped the ball. Somebody was not laser focused on the issues at hand. Project finance is a delicate matter. $250 million that had to be paid to the contractors because there was no proper planning reflects a lack of being laser focused on the Board of Public Works. So I definitely think that in my leadership style in the Board of Public Works would be to, once again, be laser focused with a vision in the future, always listening across the aisle, you know, from both Democrats, Republicans, Independents. I don't have allegiance to any particular party, so I could definitely contribute with that. I don't have any conflicts of interest, you know, from years of public service, so I'm totally independent. And once again, you know, as far as leading the team, you always have to be inclusive and build your team up. It's leadership. It's not an obligation, but it's a privilege. It's a privilege to lead teams. And from what I've seen, the teams in the Treasury are very good teams. Indeed, they have done a great job. And I don't intend to fix what's broken. I think there's been a good job by the previous 20-year tenure of the Honorable Nancy Coop. And, you know, just probably need some fine tuning, but just be inclusive and be uplifting with the team. You know, that's basically my style.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Delegate Davis. You're on mute, Delegate. You were all ready. There you
one
go.
day, I promise you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I'll start with my leadership style as it relates to the staff over at the Office of the Treasury. My leadership style is very simple. I believe in hiring and bringing in good people and then letting them do their jobs. I understand what my strengths and my weaknesses are, and I understand that about others. My job is not to go over there and if I receive the position, it's not to go over there and remake the position, but to fine tune it. And again, to let the professionals that we got who do a good job for the citizens of Maryland day in and day out, to enable them and empower them to continue to do theirs to the best of their ability. As it relates to the Board of Public Works, I understand that I would be transitioning from a policy-making role to more of an executive role. And to be honest, I think sometimes that gets lost on that particular board. In my view, it's not a policy-making board. That's the Maryland General Assembly. So for me, the role there would be, again, to know the wishes of my constituents. In this case, that would be the House and Senate, and to advocate forcefully and effectively for the core principles and values that you all hold true and that you all have, the vision that you have for the state of Maryland. So my job is to be your voice.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. Mr. John Douglas. Good to see you. You're on mute, sir. Can you unmute? Try one more time, please. There you go. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm glad I finally got the video working. Pleasure seeing you all. I've worked with both the comptroller and the treasurer for years. We served in the legislature together. They are, I consider, personal friends of mine. We've always worked together. I also enumerated, of course, many of the committee I've chaired in the legislature. And in doing those and getting the constitutional amendments passed that I mentioned, I always had a good working relationship with all the committees, all the members. And of course, I would be the board's, the legislature's representative on the Board of Public Works. I think I do very well. My history of achievements in the fiscal area are substantial, and I'd be happy to be your next state treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you. My leadership style is somewhat eclectic, depending on the individual and the situation. I like to use a light touch, meaning I have the right people in place and I'm confident that the job they have to do is being done well. I don't have to interfere with their business every day. I like to hear from them. I like to talk to them. I like to understand what's going on, but I don't need to do the job for them. Having said that, I'm also very inquisitive. I like to know how things work. It's just the nature of being from my profession. So I ask a lot of questions all up and down the organization. I'll know everyone in the building by the time, a few weeks or months go by. And they'll wonder why I keep stopping by and saying, what is it you do and why? Because I like to know how things work, because that lets me build on that to help provide input and insights as to how things can work better. And as to the Board of Public Works, initially, I would look to the leadership for guidance as to how best to represent the legislature. That's going to be a little bit of foreign territory for me and a learning experience. There is good staff in place, I understand. And in every case, I'll be looking out for the interests of the people of the state of Maryland as represented by the legislature when we award contracts on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the committee for our candidates? Oh, Senator Gazzoni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several of you have mentioned the role with regard to the pension system. Hopefully just a very brief answer. It's a complicated question, I know. Generally speaking, do you think, for each of you, is the asset allocation appropriate the way it is, or how would you change it in any significant way?
We'll begin with Mr. Cortez.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. In portfolio performance, it's always related to asset allocation. It's one of the major factors and drivers behind performance. Currently, as of June 30th, 2020, I see an asset allocation of public equity of 36.2% and private equity 14.2%. and rate sensitive of 18.6%. One of the reasons why perhaps the pension fund is underfunded at 72% definitely has to do with asset allocation. In an environment of low rates, of historically low rates, where there has been a lot of spread compression and a lot of doubtful credits that are paying low rates of interest, I think we are in dangerous territory eventually for interest rate increases from the Fed. And this will definitely impact the rate sensitive portion of the portfolio. I would probably increase a little bit on the real assets part, absolute return, and probably a little bit of private equity as well. Those are the only asset classes that will help in the long run try to achieve the funded status for the pension fund. Having said that, I am aware that there have been legal modifications to the policy and that there is risk sharing, a little bit of risk sharing between the retirees and the state and the fund. And, there are only two pension funds that are fully funded in the US, Wisconsin and South Dakota, if I'm not mistaken. And part of their success has been the risk sharing. But to summarize, I would definitely do a little bit of fine tuning with the asset classes. And as I said, increase a bit in absolute return and private equity as well, and a little bit in real assets. Decrease a little bit of public equity and rate sensitive as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Davis.
Thank you once again. Mr. Cortez laid out the current asset allocation, but I guess I would take a slightly different tact. For now, I would leave it just as is. Although we haven't fully reached our goal in terms of pension funding, we had a very significant year last year. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe the pension fund made in the neighborhood of $5 billion. So we're getting close to that goal as is. Nobody can predict the future, and obviously working with my colleagues on the pension board, those decisions will certainly, as they need adjusting, we will do that. But I think we're on the right track. As mentioned, we're at 72%, which is, we're steadily increasing from where we were just a few years ago. And we're heading towards, I believe the target is 80%. So we're certainly on track to get there. Again, we never know how things may change and we need to alter that approach. But as of this day, with that question, I wouldn't alter our approach. I would continue the course that we're on. Obviously, we're not going to have the same profits year over year, but we are making significant progress the way we're going. And at this point in time, I don't believe a reallocation is necessary.
Thank you, Delegate. Mr. Douglas?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I mentioned during my presentation how poorly our returns were compared to our peers. And I gave you some estimates on the size of the assets if we had performed in the upper quartile of our peers. I would index most of the fund, about 85% of it, because the index is doing very well. And when you track the market performs much better than our investment portfolio does for us. So that would be my major goal, to take a deep dive into the investment committee of the Board of Trustees. And I think I would index most of the fund.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you. I do not claim to have great expertise as to how the fund is currently indexed. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, is currently allocated. I would hold for the moment until I was able to learn and consult with the experts currently assisting the ERS and the committee. And as stated, though, asset allocation is critical to performance. We've seen that in our fund at Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is over 90% funded as of June 30, 2021. We're quite proud of that. That was not always true during my tenure on that board of the last 11 years. And we did a number of things. We did move to private equity to a degree, although I am concerned now that there is more money than there are good investments, which is always a bad situation because the investment managers start to take on more and more risk and you get poor results. We saw that with the move to hedge funds, I think back in the 90s. Lots of pensions moved to hedge funds blew up, lots of pensions lost money. Texas, I believe, was an example of that. I would want to know a whole lot more before I would suggest change. I have found that new leaders who immediately suggest market change often cause more problems than they solve. You need to know where you are and why before you can propose changes to move forward. Agreed, we need to move better, find a way to move the funding level of our pension system up markedly. Performance has not been what it should be, and we need to move forward with that. But I need to know a lot more first. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the members? I don't see any more at this time. This completes our question and answer portion for the candidates. Madam Speaker Pro Tem, President Pro Tem.
That's quite all right.
We are able to give you parts in the house too. We're able to move to the next portion of our meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of the candidates for your remarks and your responses and your interest in serving the state of Maryland. So statute requires that the committee vote be conducted by secret ballot. And so what we're going to ask each member to do is to cast your vote using the chat feature in Zoom. As the Speaker Pro Tem stated, your votes will be received by one staff member who will tally them and report to us the results at the end of our voting. Let me just say to the members, and again, thank you all for getting your post-Thanksgiving Monday, getting right up and getting on this Zoom with us for this important committee. What will happen after we cast the vote and get our results is the Speaker Pro Tem and I will produce a letter sharing with the General Assembly the results of this committee's work. When the vote is taken by the members of the General Assembly, all of the names of the candidates who have presented this morning will appear on the ballot. In addition, there will be a space for write-in so that our colleagues would have the opportunity to vote on all of the candidates that we've considered this morning, as well as writing in any additional candidates they would like to present for our consideration. So with that, we'll pause and ask that staff be prepared to receive our votes. And thank you all for facilitating this meeting. I'm going to mute and give everyone a few minutes to vote. Okay, is everyone finding the feature okay? And let us know if you have any questions. Getting quite good at this Zoom process here. Okay, we'll pause a few minutes and I think we'll hear back from staff shortly. Is that correct, Madam Speaker Pro Tem?
Yes.
Okay.
It will be tallied and respond back to you. All right.
Good morning, everyone. We have the votes in. All right, for Mr. George Cortez, he received 0 votes. For Mr. Derek Davis, he received a total of 10 votes. For Mr. John Douglas, he received a total of 0 votes. For Mr. Joseph Zimmerman, he received a total of 0 votes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to the Speaker Pro Tem, but certainly want to again, I think on behalf of this committee, thank Treasurer Kopp for her phenomenal service to the state as our treasurer and in other roles of public service. It has just been an honor to serve with you and to watch you work on behalf of the citizens of the state of Maryland. And again, I thank each of the members for your involvement in this work. Madam Speaker Pro Tem, I'll allow you to close out and give final remarks to our candidates.
Sure. Thank you, President Pro Tem. Again, to all the candidates, thank you for your time. It certainly is an honor to be with you today, to be a part of this process, and to know that you brought your heart and your soul into this process by wanting to serve the citizens of the state of Maryland. So again, for that, we thank you. I also just wanted to take a moment to thank Treasurer Kopp personally. Very grateful for her leadership as she has navigated the ups and downs of our financial woes nationally and in the state of Maryland, but to that end, keeping our state strong. So just like to congratulate her on her years of service. And as you have heard, President Pro Tem has indicated that our process is very transparent and streamlined, and our members will all be able to vote accordingly when we return for special session. Again, thank you, committee members, today for your time, and we will close this meeting on today. And we pray that you all have a safe and rest of a good rest of the month and close our year out successfully. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have